Continuing our reading of Brighty of the Grand Canyon, Chapter 10, On the Mend. While Brighty's wounds healed, he grazed stiff-legged in Uncle Jimmy Owen's meadow. He saw little of Uncle Jim during the day, for in all through Kabbab Forest, no man was busier. Hunting parties came to Wiley's summer camp nearby, rough and rugged men eager to hunt mountain lion. And it was Uncle Jim who served as their guide. He fitted big men to big mules and little men to little mules. And besides hunting, he lent a hand when things needed doing at Wiley's camp. But night times belonged to Brighty. Then he was the center of things, and everything happened around him. Uncle Jim came home riding a white mule with a train of riderless mules behind him and a pack of yelping, footsore hounds. Brighty went limping each night to greet them, braying a lusty welcome home as he went. When the mules had fed and bedded down and the hounds cared for, he would nudge Uncle Jim toward the cabin. "Sure tickles me, Brighty," Uncle Jim would laugh softly. "The way you hustles me along. Seems like I'm your critter instead of the other way around." While he prepared supper over the cook stove inside, Brighty waited outside in nervous eagerness, pawing and stomping the earth. Then after supper, he tailed Uncle Jimmy from one ponderosa pine to another as he gathered yellow lumps of resin. "You'll make her," Uncle Jimmy would say every night as he melted the gum and stirred it with his finger. "Yup," he would nod, pouring the warm gun into each gash. "Soon you'll be going lickety-la-rup again. What's more, your hair'll grow long enough so hardly a scar'll show." Brighty always sat for this performance, his tail stretched along the ground behind him like a piece of rope. He enjoyed the whole business of having his wounds dressed. He even got into the habit of lifting one forefoot and then another, stepping into the pants leg like a child dressing himself. As for the suspenders, he was grown used to them too. He gave with every motion and rubbed pleasantly along his shoulders at an itchy spot he could never reach himself. "Get along with you, Brighty," Uncle Jim pronounced when his nursing was done each evening. "I got my cabin to tidy up." Brighty loped off then to tend to his own business. There was a big chunk of red salt inside the mule corral, and by poking his head between the rails, he could get a good lick at it. He had a worn, sizable trough, and always his tongue grooved the same place, licking, in slapping rhythm. Meanwhile, the white mule worked on the other side of the chunk, as if trying to meet Brighty halfway. It was a routine they went through every night. Afterwards, Brighty walked all around the corral, cleaning up wisps of hay that the mules had let fall over the fence. Not since his fight with the cougar had he slept in his cave in the mountain. He was content to hug the meadow, where he could hear the mules snorting and the comforting noises from the cabin. Uncle Jimmy singing cowboy songs and dumping the dishwater out the door, sometimes just missing him by a hair. One night, instead of cooking supper over his stove, Uncle Jim built a fire out of doors. Brighty watched big-eyed, watched the sourdough being pinched off into mouth-sized pieces and laid in a neat pattern in the Dutch oven. "Bet this minds you of old-timer, don't it, Brighty?" The burro sidled closer, asking to have his back scratched. With a flowery hand, Uncle Jimmy obliged. "Lucky thing no women folk about," he said. "They'd squeak like mice at my cooking and scratching your lousy little self all the same time." Brighty leaned his weight against his friend, enjoying the moment. "What women don't know," Uncle Jimmy confided, "is that a flea'd ruther cling to a passel of fur than a bald biscuit. Eh, Brighty?" A grunt came in reply. "Sometimes it appears to me I need your company a sight worse than you need mine. Daytimes I'm too busy to mull about things, but when night comes, my mind fastens on an old-timer, and I get a sad, pinched-up feeling." He paused in his rubbing and took off old-timer's hat, looking at it as if he could see the white head of hair and the twinkling blue eyes it used to shade. "We ain't forgot you, old-timer," he said. "It's just that your killer's so slippery. We know he's hiding somewhere in the canyon, probably just waiting to take over your mind." He turned now to Brighty, an angry light in his eyes. "But me and you will round him up if it's the last thing we do." A night moth settled on the black hat, and Uncle Jim flipped it away. "Money don't mean a tinker to us, old-timer. A reward's been offered for the villain, but every cent'll go to help little Mimi. You'll see." This night, when supper was done, Uncle Jimmy did not go off gathering pine resin. He took out his knife and slit open Brighty's frayed pants leg. Then he threw them into the fire. A black smoke curled upward, and the smell of pine gum filled the air. "There, partner," Uncle Jimmy said, his voice suddenly grown husky. "You're free. Free as that night bird winging out over the canyon. Go on, feller. Take off." Brighty looked down at his bare legs, with the new hairs covering his scars, and let out a wild braying. He struck off for the corral and high-stepped around it like some show pony. Then back he came at a gallop, sliding to a stop in front of Uncle Jim. The man laughed, and then he felt a little glow of pride rising in him. "How often?" he asked, his eyes on the fire, and one hand working hard at his mustache. "How often do I get to tell you, feller? I ain't one to hang on to you. Goodbye, Brighty, you're free." But Brighty lingered. It seemed as if he wanted to square accounts for the long weeks of nursing. One early morning when Uncle Jim came out of the cabin carrying his water tins, Brighty blocked his path, almost asking to be put to work. Anyone else might have brushed the little fellow aside with a laugh. "Yeah, I know. You'll run off with my tins and I'll waste the whole day tracking you." But Uncle Jim thought a second, and his eyes lit up with pleasure. He went into the cabin for a shoulder strap, and then packed the tins on Brighty. He started up a path to a small spring on the hillside. While he trudged on ahead, he rummaged in his mind, trying to find some reason for the change in Brighty. Maybe, he mused to himself, it's like what happened to the kid who had to have his hair shaved off. Straight as string it was, but when it growed back after the fever, I'll be danged if it didn't kink all over his head like tendrils on a morning glory vine. Maybe, he concluded, some critters change his character after a sickness, instead of looks. Now you take Brighty's fight with the she-lion. Could it have been a settling influence on his character? Uncle Jim faced around to make sure that Brighty was following. Yes, there he was, head bent to the climb as if fetching water was the prime thought of his life. The old man nodded, answering his own question. That's the way I see it. He sighed a little as he took the tins from Brighty's back and plunged one after another into the spring. Feller, he said, shaking his head, I'm mighty obliged for the help, but don't you get too domesticated on me.